Welcome to Control Alt Succeed, a Molpark education podcast series exploring the role of tertiary education in shaping the next generation of active citizens, economic participants, and future leaders. And this through a host of topics focusing on business, education, and today's digital and knowledge-driven economy. In this 12-part series, we dive into how higher education institutions are not just preparing students for jobs, but also for life, building character, fostering leadership, and equipping them with skills they need to navigate and contribute to our ever-evolving world. I am Ayanda Nenemba, your host, and absolutely thrilled to welcome you to a journey down the pathway of success. Please do join in the conversation via our Molpark Education social media platforms. Now, today's conversation looks at the importance of tertiary education in shaping active citizens and future leaders, as well as character development as a crucial supplement to technical skills within the various product offerings. Now, joining me are two incredible guests who bring rich insights to this conversation, starting off with Marlies Pitter, Chief Academic Officer at Molpark Education. Marlies previously served as the Executive Head of the Financial Services School at Molpark, as well as Executive Dean. Welcome, Marlies.
Thank you so much, Ayanda.
Now, joining us together with Marlies is Dr. Judith Terblanche, Head of Learning, Innovation and Development at Molpark Education. Judith's previous experience also includes the Head of Become Development, Associate Professor, Senior Lecturer. Really great to have you here with us, Judith. Welcome.
Thank you, Ayanda. It's great to be here.
Absolutely wonderful day out in the sun, ladies. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation where we really delve into these important topics, looking at the role of higher education in shaping the next generation of active citizens. Let's kickstart, Marlies, with looking, at how education as a whole, being absolutely important, but your views on why specifically tertiary education plays such a vital role in shaping not just employees for our economy, but active citizens and economic participants.
Your question actually relates to one of the major debates in higher education today, and that is, what is the role of higher education in society? So specifically, if we consider the democratization of knowledge, just thinking about having a cell phone in our hand and knowledge is there available at our fingertips, it really requires of us to consider and almost come back to what I would consider the original mission of the university, and that is to create and preserve and also transfer knowledge, and also to be the creators and custodians of critical thinking, and then to nurture engaged citizenship. And I think if we then consider the role of higher education, and specifically within the South African context, I would refer to it as the operational mission is learning and teaching, research and community engagement, and how we use that in order to cultivate active citizenship, to encourage a democratic participation in our students, and within our context, valuing diversity and the value that the other bring is so important. But ultimately, the role of higher education will be to produce economically productive graduates. They must be able to be agile, to adapt to the global workplace, to have relational skills. Of course, as humans, it's very important for us to relate with one another, being digitally savvy, of course. Maybe just to finish off then this thought and bringing or tying it back into the concept of knowledge is a saying from Hansen, which Judith actually introduced me to, and that is to have a reflective openness to the new and a reflective loyalty to the known. And I think that is what we need in higher education, how we should see our roles if we challenge our students today.
Absolutely phenomenal. Reflective openness to the new and reflective commitment
to the known.
To the known. Absolutely amazing. Let me tell you, Marlies, so in between the years 2019 and just at the brink of the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Economic Forum started talking about the new way of doing things in the new workforce, declaring that in the next 25 years, the work that will be required and the jobs in the next 25 years have not yet been crafted, speaking very much to what we're saying today and to the demand to the traditional way of doing things. And we also looked at the shift in particularly the United Kingdom. Labour there started looking at different working hours and allowing the workforce to sort of focus on deliverables and not so much the traditional way of doing work. Now, here's what I think we would want to understand, particularly in this conversation, the changing shift in not only the workforce of the future, but the sought after skills and attributes that are driving change, impact, and economies of the future. Talk to us about that.
If we just consider the new generations coming through now as part of the workforce, and you mentioned the World Economic Forum, and they specifically predicted by this year, the Generation Z will make up a quarter of the workforce. So it's really important for us to consider their needs and who they are. And we know that they are digitally fluent or digitally sophisticated. We also know that they have a greater awareness maybe than previous generations around the global perspective, that they want to make a difference. And I mean also environmental and other issues relating to human beings, mental health and even other aspects. So then if we maybe just stand still a little bit on what the demands is of the workplace specifically, then with the introduction of generative AI, robotics coming through, there will be an increasing demand for higher skilled jobs. And by that, I do not imply higher technical skills, but it's almost on the continuum of human capabilities that we need to be higher skilled as humans and what we bring that is unique into the workplace. So other workplace needs that I think is important is talent velocity, reskilling as we see the rapid rate of change coming through in the workplace, and then also a need for collaboration. And then I almost want to ask myself then, what does this mean for us in higher education? And I definitely think we need to create that environment that is, of course, technology enabled, but where we create that space of safety for students to be vulnerable so that they can really tap into and focus on the human power skills, because that surely is the unique human element that we bring. And then as higher education, we want to create experiences for our students which is meaningful, where they can build community, they can build strong relationships. Another aspect which I think is important is to consider industry partnerships and how we actually, through the industry partnerships, expose our students to the workplace, which would be more relevant to your more traditional student where they are not currently working. But of course, we have non-traditional students who wants to change careers and then also to open up opportunities for them to maybe reskill even as they study. And then at the end of the day, I think it's important for us to create a desire for lifelong learning and also that adaptability that then comes with it and transferability of skills that we want to instill in our graduates.
So a few years ago, we were concluding our studies at one of the business schools, and a friend of mine and I started talking about where to from here. And obviously at that time, we wanted to do everything connected to technology. We want to be in the innovative space. We want to be in the generative AI space. We want to be there because that's where the wave of education is focused on. And then she says to me, out of a research that she had been doing, that it is important to continue to focus on human sciences, because whilst we are at a wave that demands AI, the need for human sciences, the need for collaboration, the need for the human touch is also as important. And that's why we want to bring in Dr. Judith. I'd like us to talk about some of the key words that Marlies mentions in her previous points: collaboration, vulnerability, lifelong learning. Dr. Judith, With the changes mentioned around the shifts that we are seeing, not only in the workforce, but in the workplace, and the expectations, why is character development just as important as technical skills?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jana. That's a great question. I think what's quite important is, we've touched on it. We live in a knowledge economy. We can know a lot. Knowing on its own does not really mean something.
Sure.
So what is important, therefore, is you can have knowing, but then you need to have responsible doing. And to get to responsible doing, social just doing, what we are after is the being of the knower, of the knowledge. So what is important for us is how do we make sure that the people are not attending higher education institutions to try and accumulate as much knowledge as possible, but to almost prompt them and provoke them to ask, how can I use this knowledge and implement this knowledge so that I can make a change, so that when I make decisions, it is just and responsible. Now, let's face it, I think my release used the word like human power skills. It's always that debate about hard and soft skills. In the times where we live now, the knowledge and the technical skills, to my mind, is actually the easier skills. I will not replace it now with soft, but to a large degree, that's not the complexity. That's not the messiness of human behavior and human interaction. The world is complex. We live in a diverse, fast-paced environment. And for that, we need to prepare people to actually thrive in this uncertain times, in this complexity, in this rich diversity. And therefore, you need to prepare them for how they are going to lead themselves. The person needs to be able to lead themselves first. Then they need to lead in a team. They need to lead in a community. They need to lead in the world. But where does it start? It starts with the being of the person that is actually embracing new knowledge so that they can implement it for the societal well-being. And what is very important, therefore, for us is how do you focus on developing that leading yourself? How do you learn to know more about you, know your boundaries, know the constraints of yourself, and being stretched in an environment where you can actually now realize that was a blind spot. I've never considered this. I noticed something that I've never noticed before. How do I become comfortable to risk? How do I be comfortable to actually share what I think and feel? Because if we say we're in a fast-paced environment, digital change, complex human behavior, then that means we need people that can innovate to solve challenges. But innovation means I need to think afresh. But where does that start? Sure. It starts with yourself, thinking fresh, even in how you regulate yourself and your self-development. So my release used the word lifelong learning, and that's exactly that. Sure. That it's not just the knowledge that I'm going to accumulate that is self-long learning. It is who you are needs to be continuously evolve. We're not a finished product. Education is not a finished product. We need to understand that we need to build and evolve ourselves equally so as our knowledge and anything that changes around us.
And I suppose then at Millpark, with the commitment that you've pledged to imparting these critical attributes, I suppose one of those, being teaching the knower to implement action and not just accumulate knowledge, but to try to process that knowledge so that it becomes tangible solutions. It becomes a response to a need in the immediate community. Now, and that for students goes a long way if we really, are to look at the demands of our economy right now. Looking then at the commitment by Millpark to imparting critical attributes to your students and equipping them with tools needed to have fulfilling careers and lives. Marlies, let me come back to you. Can you talk about that and just elaborate in terms of what that entails?
We believe in the transformational power of education. And what we believe is that we want to create a space where students will be able to find that innate ability that they have to grow and to transform. And through that process, we want to shape their values and their skills and their mindset in order for them to go out and make meaningful changes and to have a societal impact. Now, one of the things that is important to us is that we do not think that we possess everything in order to create that space or to shape the students, but it's actually about the students finding it within themselves and finding almost their knowledge through this journey. And for us, what we decided to do is to almost put our stamp of approval or commitment of quality by communicating what we believe our graduate attributes should be, which translates into words that we put together in order to say that if we put graduates out there, we want to say that this is the commitment that comes with putting the Millpark graduate attributes there. And what we've decided on is to focus on human first, digitally fluent, that's number one. Secondly, South African inspired, globally relevant, creative problem solvers and resilient enactors, relevant contributors, active collaborators, excellence within, service beyond.
Something that's very important for us is the transformational learning journeys that Marilise has spoken about, and that is to unlock human potential. So that's focused on the individual. But if you actually look further to our mission and our vision and our purpose, then there's a second part to it, and that is shaping our collective future. So the unlocking of the potential of the self must be for the benefit of shaping our collective future. And I think that's why it's so important when you think through these graduate attributes to think, how do we ensure that such an authentic relational basis of education actually ensures that it extends beyond the self to the collective benefit?
And, in everything that we've been discussing in this episode, there's a lot of collaboration. There's a demand for this collaboration, and there's a demand for striking a balance between your behavioral attributes as well as your technical skills. Dr. Judith, can we maybe talk about the real balance that is required between the demands for change and the quality of teachers and lecturers and knowledge facilitators that is required in order for us to meet this demand?
Yeah, that's a great one, one that I have no answer for. And if anybody out there has the answer, please share. I think the challenge is when we say that we strongly believe that an individual needs to be provoked and be transformed through education, because that's meaningful education. Then ultimately what it means is the person that needs to facilitate that curated learning journey, something needs to happen with that self as well. And I think the challenge is, in what way do we equip our staff that needs to engage with our students in such a way that they are able to see their role different? Because in a traditional perspective, if we look at education, you had the lecturer, teacher, yes, it's content. They teach because they're the expert.
Yeah.
That's already immediately a power dynamic.
Top-down
I
approach.
tell you what you need to know. So you just sit and you receive. So we all know that part is challenging. But I think as we swift over to a new way, the challenge is, what does it mean? How uncomfortable might it feel for a lecturer to stand in a room and actually realize, I should not necessarily see myself as the expert because I'm co-creating knowledge with my students. I'm learning from them. Yes, of course, there's technical aspects that they know a lot more about than some of the students. But the lived experience of how some of these technical aspects plays out in life, we need to encounter other people to actually realize that perhaps my complete picture, my perfect vision of what a theory or a principle means is actually flawed because it's incomplete. Because I need the diverse perspectives of others to get to a greater, a more clear picture, which is still incomplete. because you need more voices and different perspectives, and also understanding, and Marilee's reference to it, agility. It's not a fixed answer. And we need to be able to ensure that our lecturers, as our students, are comfortable in moving, in pivoting, in changing, in realize that knowing isn't complete, that there's more to know, more to grow, broader to see. And I think therefore the challenge is the journey that we need to do on our facilitators, as I would like to call it, of learning, is to almost ensuring that they are comfortable in who they are and in what their role is, but their role might be different than 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
Sure. In trying to piece together the democratization of knowledge within the knowledge economy, I'm looking at the Blue Pledge, and it looks like all these attributes speak very much to all of these toolings and the systems and the need for this balance that we want to strike, in charting forward an integrated approach in order to respond to demand. Dr. Judith, there's so much to unpack with these Blue Pledge attributes, and we definitely will be unpacking these in the few episodes to come. But for today, as we conclude our conversation, how do we foster these essential character traits in our students?
I'm going to lead with one word: intentionality. So we've just discussed that it's quite complex to shift into transformational learning journeys, and it also speaks to the facilitators of learning and that relationship that needs to be developed. The reality is, if you just purely look at the word graduate attribute, it's a buzzword that's been around. And the reason why I started my answer with intentionality is there's a difference when we have a page on a word that looks great versus if you actually put all your energy and your intentionality behind what and how would I like to shape this individual that is passing through my higher education institution. And I think what is important therefore for us is, because we're intentional, because we put our energy in there, we don't necessarily take the easiest route. You've mentioned Ayanda, and I think Marilee's mentioned it as well, collaboration. Now, collaboration means you need to talk with people. You're not on your own. You can make an easy answer, implement an easy answer, but that's very often then an incomplete answer. So in collaboration, that is much more complex, we get to a richer answer. So something that we do intentionally is the collaboration between our learning, innovation and development team and the faculty members in the different schools. So the intentionality in designing the pedagogy that needs to happen in our learning material that's available online, as well as what the role of the facilitator needs to be when we have live synchronous moments. All of that moments were intentionally crafted between different teams. And I think that for me is where our attributes becomes not an add-on to our content or our knowledge, but it actually infuses the knowledge, because the intentionality when we think about every moment in our pedagogy is the combination of developing the self and the attributes plus someone that needs to have knowledge and skills so that they can apply it in our economic reality.
What an incredible conversation. Intentionality, integrated learning, collaboration, changing landscapes, agility, the balance between the being and the doing, human first, South African inspired, creative problem solvers, relevant contributors, excellence in service and beyond. These are some of the buzzwords in our conversation today, ultimately unlocking potential. And based on our discussion today, it is very clear that tertiary education plays a crucial role in shaping not just skilled professionals, but also well-rounded individuals ready to lead and contribute to society. Thanking our guest in studio today, Marilee Peter, Chief Academic Officer at Mohawk Education, as well as Dr. Judith Terablanche, who is Head of Learning, Innovation and Development at Molpark Education, for sharing your incredibly valuable insights. We look forward to unpacking those attributes in our next episode. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this very first episode. Do join us next time as we continue to explore the intersection of education and leadership. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with anyone passionate about the future of education and leadership. Until next time, I am Ayanda signing off. Stay inspired and keep learning.